there, friends and sane persons, and welcome to another episode of Wednesday Whimsy with a wrinkled collar, it looks like. Uh, I'm Kyle, and Wednesday Whimsy is a short show I do every Wednesday evening where I talk about a board game, a top 10, a board game topic, or something else that happens to be on my mind, usually board game related. Today, I want to talk about something that's a little less defined, but this is, I've been playing a lot of games that have been quite thematic lately. Last week I talked about Obsession, which is a game that kind of lives and dies by its theme. And I thought, well, that one's going to be on the list. I guess I'll spoil it for you. But um, I wanted to talk about some other games, good games I enjoy, that really live or die by their theme. What I mean by this is if you're not invested in the theme, you probably won't really enjoy the game. And on the other hand, if you are invested in the theme, you're going to love them. And it's just I think these are games that really lead with their theme. They put their theme first. Now, there's a lot of games that don't do this. Lots of the games behind me are games that are just sort of, they're good games, and they're enjoyable for the gameplay, and the theme might be second. These are games, the ones I'm talking about today, where the theme is definitely not second. It is first and foremost, and really kind of a take it or leave it. You're not going to love the game very likely if you don't love the theme. Anyway, with that introduction, I don't think this will be a long list. I mean, it's 10 entries, but uh, let's get going with my number 10. All right, my number 10 is the one game that I think is, and I think I ranked these in sort of terms of both how much, well, it's partially in front of how much I like them, but also how strong and pervasive the theme is. And this is a game that I really enjoy, and I really love because of the theme. In fact, the theme makes it a 10 out of 10 for me. But the game is Masters of the Universe Clash for Eternia. It's a game I talk about, well, a fair bit. It's a game that I really enjoy, and the reason I really enjoy it, though, I mean, I think the gameplay is great, but the reason I really enjoy it is because of the theme. It brings sort of this He-Man and the Masters of the Universe theme to the forefront. And as I've said many times, this is the game I wish I had had as a teenager because I would have played this thing every single day. I mean, if this had been the only game I had, it would have been a lifestyle game for me. So this is a game where I just don't know if you're not interested in the theme. I don't think you're even going to get it out. I don't think you're going to look for it. I don't think you're going to buy it. It's a game, however, where if you do like the theme, it is going to be just an absolute favorite for you. It's so thematic. You've got all these characters and they're fighting it out and they've got their special abilities. The rules are dead simple. The gameplay is fast and frantic and fun. And it's just a pure delight to play. But it is a game that really puts its theme first. So that's my number 10, Masters of the Universe Clash for Eternia. Let's go to number 9. Number 9 is not a game I talk about very much. It's a game that I really enjoyed when it came out, though. The reason I really enjoyed it was just so thematic and fun. And that game is called Comanauts. So in Comanauts, let's pull it up here. In Comanauts, you are, there's this professor who has created some machine that's backfired and it's going to end the world unless you're able to stop it somehow. And the way that you're going to do that is the professor has gone into a coma and you're going to enter into these various mindscapes and you'll encounter his emotions. You'll put to rest childhood traumas. You will deal with nightmares or nightmarish figures and vices. And really, as the game starts, you're going to go through these stories. You're exploring this book. It's the same sort of underlying mechanisms as are in Stuffed Fables and Aftermath, but it's really an interesting theme. In fact, I think sometimes the rules get in the way of the theme, where you're kind of playing a scenario and then it kind of pulls you out, and there's this weird kind of deduction element that I don't love. I wish you would just sort of play through a scenario, actually. I think that's a superior way to play the game. But it's very thematic. It's rooted in sort of how these negative emotions and nightmares and childhood traumas interact with this person. And as you're going through it, it's just you jump in and you're playing through a story, really. So it's a game that doesn't get a lot of love. It's kind of not really being supported. It's a finished product, but it's a fantastic experience and very theme forward. My number 9, Comanauts. My number 8 is also a cooperative game. I might not have mentioned it, but Comanauts is cooperative. This is a game that it's well loved, and there's several different versions of it. But it's a game that again really lives and dies by its theme, and that game is Chronicles of Crime. So Chronicles of Crime, I really enjoy, and I like it more now than when I first played it. But what you're doing is you are a police investigator and you're going through and kind of you're looking at this scene and you've got this device, well, it's your phone, but you're going to look around in the scene and sort of tell what you see, and your other players are going to pull out these markers that sort of describe what you might see, and you'll scan them with your phone, and then you'll go and you'll talk to somebody and you'll scan them with your phone and get some sort of dialogue or interaction, and then you might come back later, and the person might tell you something different, or you might have sort of different information and you're able to ask different questions. It's a great investigative game. It is a game where you are sort of look, the game mechanisms aren't all that interesting. It's just scanning cards, right? And then trying to sort of put things in the right sequence. But when you're in there and you're sort of really investigating what's going on, this can be really a delight. And a good game of this is just going to be remembered by everyone. But nobody really talks about it for the game mechanisms, which again are just scanning cards. And if you hate the thought of criminal investigation, you're not going to like this. There's nothing else about it. There's a couple different versions where they've taken the criminal investigation and put it in different contexts. You can go back to sort of ancient times or forward to the future, but the underlying sort of thematic elements and trappings of this are going to carry it for you if you're going to like the game. So that's my number 8, Chronicles of Crime. Let's go on to my number 7. All right, number 7 is one of my very favorite games of all time. It has been as high as my number 2, and it is a game that is just, I love the theme of this. And that's what makes me love the game. The game mechanisms are not all that interesting, if I'm honest, and that game is Sentinels of the Multiverse. The game mechanisms are you draw a card, you play a card, and you activate a power, and then everyone else does it, and you're ultimately trying to manipulate your powers to defeat some sort of a big bad. But it's just, it can be kind of random, and it's very much about kind of finding a sequence break, much like Spirit Island, which is also a game that lives and dies by its theme, but it won't be on the list. This one, the theme is these superheroes, and it's this connected world with its own lore, and it's just so fascinating how all the characters develop and interact. There's flavor text on the cards. The artwork is sort of lovingly done. This one is a fan-made piece, I can see. And I'm probably going to find only fan-based pieces here. But anyway, what you're doing here is you're trying to overcome this big bad, and you're working together to do so. And if you like the theme, the superhero theme, you'll like the game. If you sort of go one layer deeper and get into sort of the lore of this comic series that doesn't exist, you're going to like it even more. There's a role-playing game even that will take you even deeper. And that's where the joy of this game comes. It's not necessarily in the mechanisms. Baron Blade does 2 energy damage to the player with the lowest HP is not all that exciting. But the story you tell and the way that you sort of work together and thwart a plot. And if you play the big expansion, the Oblivion expansion, I mean, the theme is going to carry that for you. This game is a lot of work, and it's not worth it if you don't like the theme. But if you do, this game is absolutely a 10 out of 10. So There you have it, Sentinels of the Multiverse, my number 7. Let's go to number 6. Number 6, there's 2 versions of the game. I'm going to put up the first one, but it doesn't really matter. This is a game that is all this game is 90% story and theme and only 10% game, and that might even be generous. This game is called Sleeping Gods. Now, look, I love Sleeping Gods. I have had so many great experiences with it. It's so long, though, that if I didn't care about the theme, I wouldn't even go in. But there's this rich world that you're in, and this artwork is great, and the storytelling is fantastic. And you're going through and having a very long adventure as you're going through this map and looking for things, discovering things, learning where things are, learning how things interact with each other in this connected world that's rich and delightful. But, game mechanisms, there's combat and there's reading stories. And the combat, you'll either love it or hate it. And the reading stories is just reading stories. There's not much more game than that. But if you like the theme, if you want this sort of fantastical world with huge monsters and strange gods, this is going to be a great game for you. It's very much a theme first game. Let's go on to my number 5. My number 5, as you can see, I didn't hit the number 5. Surprise! My number 5 is Last Will. So Last Will is the most Euro game I think that's on my list. This is a game from Vladimir Sushi where what you're trying to do is prove that you will enjoy your rich uncle's money by spending it as profligately as possible. You are going to be wasting it, and your goal is to get rid of all the money you have as quickly as possible. You can do so by buying property and then sort of ruining it and selling it for lots less than you bought it for. You can do it by going on extravagant adventures and taking unlikely travel companions and paying extra money so people will look the other way. But what you want to do is you have this money and you're trying to get rid of it. And that's it. First person to zero is going to win the game. But but sort of the mechanisms of the game aren't all that interesting. It's, play a card, add this thing. Hey, there you go. You have this negative score. If you flipped it over, where positive score, you could make this a race to 100. It's going to be sort of the same thing from a mechanism standpoint. But the theme here is just delightful. People are going to jump in and role play and tell silly stories and have just a fun adventure, because this is a game that puts its theme absolutely first. And if you're not interested in that theme, this game doesn't have very much to offer to you. It's just, trying to put combos together to get the result you want. And there's a lot of games that do that better. But with the theme, when you add that in, this one just sings. So that is my number 5, Last Will. Let's go to number 4. All right, my number 4 is a game that actually, I enjoyed it. It's a retheme of another game, but this one is so thematic first, it just really can't be dissociated from its theme anymore. And this game is called Final Girl. Final Girl is a solo-only game where what you're doing is you're a character in a horror movie, and you're trying to make it to the end and survive and off the big bad. And that's kind of what it is. And the game really leans into this sort of schlocky horror theme. I don't even watch very many schlocky horror movies, or horror movies to begin with. But the theme in this game lets me have that experience without a nightmare. And it's so thematic. Everything from the box design to the way that the characters work together to the sort of different maps and scenarios, it allows you to kind of create your own horror movie adventure. And like I said, the boxes are designed like these old-timey VHS tapes. Um, it's really so thematic, and at its core, it's kind of a random dice rolling game where you're trying to roll dice and mitigate things and keep sort of a track or two in check while you're trying to move around. And it's not it's dry thematically, but when you add in this schlocky old timey horror theme, it just really sings. I mean, it makes you almost want to watch these movies, which are nods to other horror movies, of course. But I don't know. This is one where I think everyone. So it's based on an older game called Hostage Negotiator, but I don't think anyone even plays that anymore. And I loved Hostage Negotiator, but this one is so much better. It just adds that tiny little bit that was missing, and it's the theme really that does it here. Mechanisms, take it or leave it, but the theme and the stories and the adventures you have make this game amazing. That's my number 4, Final Girl. Let's go on to the top 3. All right, this is an odd one here because this is a game that I don't even know how I feel about it. It is a game that is so weird and unlike anything else that it just lives by its theme. And that game is called Fog of Love. So Fog of Love is basically a two-player relationship RPG. You are going to have a character, and that character is going to be going on through a series of encounters with a romantic partner. And you're going to be role playing that character and trying to sort of figure out what that character would do. And you'll go through these scenes of a relationship, which could be, an argument, or an adventure you're having, or some sort of situation, and you're supposed to be role playing what your character would do, and you're trying to sort of reach certain relationship goals with your partner and keep things in various balances, and ultimately you'll win or lose if you reach certain thresholds. But from mechanisms, it's extremely dry. It's basically just what if it is what if the game. It's a very dry kind of role-playing game, but when you add in the theme, and if you really embrace it, and you are a member, you draw these traits, right, that are kind of your traits, and you role play the character, how that character would react to certain things. This game can be an amazing experience, and it's one of those games that you will remember for a long time because of the silly romantic comedy adventure that you had. And look, from a game mechanism point of view, this is a 6 out of 10 for me. But from a game play and theme, it goes, it's 8 or 9 or 10. I mean, a good game of this can be the start of a beautiful friendship. I mean, this is just so much fun to experience, even if it's not all that interesting to play. Let's go to my number 2. My number 2 is My number 2 is a game I already kind of spoiled would be on the list, and that is Obsession. The game I talked about in last week's Wednesday Whimsy, a game I just adore, but the reason I just adore it is because of the theme. Game mechanisms, it's random. It's, you're sort of just doing things to get more things to fill some goals, and those goals can feel random as well. But when you sort of embrace the theme and you take these characters and you sort of role play the events that you're hosting, and maybe you get all dressed up. I don't know. This game really sings with its theme. It lives or dies by its theme. The theme is indispensable from this game. So I already talked about it last week. You can go back and watch that one if you're curious. But it is the second most theme forward game I have for you. So enough about that. Let's go on to my number 1. And my number one was, at a time, my number one game of all time. This is a game that is so thematic. But if you don't care about the theme, I don't think you're going to like the game. I mean, if this theme is boring to you, you don't care about history, play something else. I think the game's great even without the theme, but actually I don't. Actually, that's not right, and I'll tell you why. The game is called Twilight Struggle, first of all. This is a game where you're going to take the side of one of the superpowers in the Cold War, and you are going through history, and you're reenacting historical events in a subtle sort of strategy game as you're spreading your influence and trying to control certain areas at peak moments. I did a Wednesday Whimsy on this about a year ago that you can go back and check as well. But the reason I say that I think the theme is indispensable is because this theme has been put, the game mechanisms have been put on other games, and none of them has worked as well. There's this sort of flash, Red Sea or whatever that came out, the mini Twilight Struggle. The theme didn't work very well, and the short nature of the game made it too random. There's they made this one about, why can I never remember the game? This one about sort of the Reformation, and the theme, although I love that theme, it doesn't work with those mechanisms. There's 1989, which, okay, I like almost as much as this one, but I like this one more because the sort of global scope of the Cold War makes it that much more interesting. This is a game that, you open the box and history jumps out and hits you. If you're not interested in the Cold War, I don't think you'll really love this game. I mean, the mechanisms for me are very satisfying, but it's the theme and the history that's going to bring you in. It's the theme and the history and the setting that makes this a tense, tight experience. The mechanisms are basically, I do something, you undo it. I do something, you undo it. I do something, you undo it. And that can be frustrating. But when you add in the theme and you mix it all together, and these cards that recreate historical events, it just is so soaked in this theme. It puts it on. I mean, it's the first and foremost thing you know about this game. It is the Cold War game, and everything else is just an appendage there too. So that's it. That is my top 10 theme for first games. Theme first games. And that's the end of this week's Wednesday Whimsy. I'll be back again next week with something else. Not sure what it is yet, but I'll find out before then. Until then, I'm going to wish you safe travels and courage when you need it. And I hope to see you back here again soon on another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. Bye-bye.